Hey readers, my name is Jess, and in today's video I'm going to be reading some of my favorite authors' 5-star reads. I figured that it would make sense that I would enjoy some of their favorite books if I love their own writing, right? So for this video, I checked out 3 of my favorite authors' Goodreads pages, Fredrik, Backman, Rebecca Ross, and Kristin Hanna, and I selected some of their highest rated books to read, so let's get into it. Fredrik Backman's writing is one of my favorite things on this planet. He has such a strong and unique voice, rich with humor and emotion, and his character-driven stories tug on my heartstrings every time without fail. And I'm kind of curious to know if that's a sort of book that he enjoys reading as well. Backman actually only had 1 book rated on his Goodreads account, and that is The Brothers Lionheart by Astrid Lindgren, who also happens to be the author of Pippi Longstocking. Like Backman, she's a Swedish author, so I'm really excited that this is the book that I'll be reading for him. It was published in 1973 and has since been translated into 46 languages, but I will of course be reading it in English. Even though it's technically considered a children's novel, this has rave reviews from so many adults, and it boasts a very impressive 4.35 out of 5 rating on Goodreads. But I do want to point out that I've never read this book before, so childhood nostalgia will not play a factor in my review and rating. And now that I'm thinking about that, I'm wondering, is this Backman's only reviewed book because it's a book he loved as a child? Like, could this be the book that got him into literature? Whatever. I'm gonna stop with the questions and I'm just gonna read the book for myself. But before I can get started, we have to read the synopsis so that we know what to expect. There's no one Carl Lionheart loves more than his older brother Jonathan, who is brave, strong, and handsome. Everything Carl believes he is not. Carl never wants to be parted from him, but Carl is sick and he knows he's going to die. To comfort him, Jonathan tells him stories of Nongiyala, the wonderful place he'll be going to when he dies, and where he will wait until Jonathan is ready to join him there. Then the unthinkable happens. Jonathan is killed in an accident. Heartbroken, Carl longs for the day he'll be reunited with his brother. When the time comes, he finds Nongiyala just as wonderful as he'd imagined. However, Nongiyala is under threat. A cruel tyrant is determined to claim it as his own, and at his command is a terrible beast that is feared throughout the land. Carl must summon all of his courage to help his brother prepare for the battle that lies ahead. That seems really heavy for a children's novel, but I'm very excited. Okay, I finished The Brothers Lionheart yesterday, and I do think that this is a very special book. It's a beautiful story about a little boy who finds bravery and courage within himself that he didn't think he had. I've seen discussions about whether or not this book is an appropriate read for children, and on the back of my book it looks like it suggests that it's suitable for ages 9 and up. And I think that children of that age might focus their attention more on the action or adventure or fantastical elements of the book rather than the death. But maybe those readers that are a little bit older or maybe experiencing loss in their own lives might interpret the story in a different way. And that is just a testament to the many different levels of Lindgren's writing. While it certainly deals with mortality, it's not presented in this super dark way. It actually has this sense of hopefulness and this idea that the love we share in this life is carried with us in whatever adventure comes next. I can totally see why this is such a beloved story, and I can also see how this would be a book that stays with you long after reading it, no matter your age. So overall, I had no childhood nostalgia attached to this book, and yet I was still absolutely enamored by it. I loved the classic fantasy feel, I loved the brotherhood, and I loved the development of Sweet Carl as we watch him grow throughout his adventure to help save Nangiala. Also, I just have to say this, and I can't explain it, but I feel like if you're a huge fan of The Hobbit, then you might enjoy this story too. That is, if you're open to indulging in children's literature, but I don't know. Maybe it's like that classic fantasy feel. I can't explain it, I just feel that way. So, moving on to the next author, Rebecca Ross. You may or may not know how much I love the Letters of Enchantment duology, as well as the Elements of Cadence duology, which, in my opinion, doesn't get enough love. But anyway, I am a huge fan of every single book of hers I've read, and I've read 6 of them. She's incredible at creating these fantasy worlds that feel so real and characters that I love with my whole entire heart. And personally, I feel like her stories are very original in a genre that can feel a little bit repetitive if the author isn't careful. Now, Rebecca is a lot more active on Goodreads, so I kind of had my pick from a bunch of titles. There were several 5-star reads of hers that I have previously enjoyed, like Six of Crows and Caraval, but ultimately there were 2 that really caught my eye. One of them is The Disappearances by Emily Bain Murphy, and she literally commented that she loves this book so much it hurts. Hello, that's my favorite kind of book. We're reading it. The Disappearances seems to be a young adult fantasy with elements of mystery as well, and I'm just basing that off of the Goodreads tags, but it also seems to be set during World War II, and I am a sucker for a historical setting. Okay, that's literally everything I know about the book, so let's read the synopsis. What if the ordinary things in life suddenly disappeared? Ayla Quinn's mother, Juliet, has always been a mystery. Vibrant yet guarded, she keeps her secrets beyond Ayla's reach. When Juliet dies, Ayla and her younger brother Miles are sent to live in Sterling, a rural town far from home, in the place where Juliet grew up. Sterling is a place with mysteries of its own, a place where the experiences that weave life together, scents of flowers and food, reflections from mirrors and lakes, even the ability to dream, vanish every 7 years. No one knows what caused these disappearances or what will slip away next, but Sterling always suspected that Juliet Quinn was somehow responsible, and Ayla must bear the brunt of their blame while she follows the chain of literary clues her mother left behind. As the next disappearance nears, Ayla begins to unravel the dual mystery of why the disappearances happen and who her mother truly was. One thing is clear, Sterling isn't going to hold on to anyone's secrets for long before it starts giving them up. I mean, that sounds pretty good to me, so let's just read. Alright, so I'm back after finishing The Disappearances, and you know what? I really enjoyed that. First off, I loved the characters and I loved the mystery. I thought the story was done exceptionally well in hinting at things and giving you little bits of information at a time, so you felt like you were stumped along with the characters and trying to theorize and make connections. So most of the story is told through Ayla's perspective, but we also get a second narrative, which I was not expecting, and it's basically this man who has a connection to Ayla's mom and the town of Sterling, but we don't really know much about that. So that part of the story is kind of like this little puzzle in which we're wondering, how does this mysterious man fit into the story, and what does he know about the disappearances? Now, I do want to talk about setting. This book takes place in Connecticut during World War II. Our main focus is Sterling, which has this really strong town identity with the disappearances. and I was really excited to read a book that took place in Connecticut because I grew up in Connecticut. But I have to say, I kept forgetting that the book was taking place in the 40s. Besides the occasional mention of war or more old-fashioned language like swell, it felt like it could also be fairly modern. But that historical setting makes way for one very intriguing part of the book, and that is all of the Shakespearean references. Ayla is constantly poring over her Shakespeare stories, trying to make connections between the curse and his writing. And I think that reliance on literature rather than technology or whatever the town would turn to today was very special. Also, that last reading clip of me all happy, that was a reaction to the romantic subplot. I loved them so much. It wasn't a huge part of the story, but I was incredibly invested in it. And after I finished reading that passage, I literally went back and just reread it again immediately. They're just so cute. It's a slow burn and it's just top tier. Overall, the writing of this book was really immersive and enchanting and fit the vibe of the story so well. I can totally see why Rebecca Ross loves this book. I rated it 4 stars, which on my personal rating scale means I loved it and I highly recommend it. And I'm just really grateful that I checked out her Goodreads profile and found this book through it because I had genuinely never heard anyone talk about it before. So I said a couple of Ross's 5-star reads caught my attention, and this next one caught my eye because it's actually one of the few unread books that I have sitting on my shelf, and I've just been looking for the proper motivation to read it. This is definitely it. So next we've got For the Wolf by Hannah Whitten, which is the first book in the Wilderwood duology, and from my understanding, this is a dark fantasy with a bit of romance as well. Based on the Goodreads reviews, it does seem to be hit or miss with readers, but do you know who else rated this book 5 stars? Rachel Gillig, the author of One Dark Window, which is another favorite of mine, so we are absolutely checking this out. As the only second daughter born in centuries, Red has one purpose: to be sacrificed to the wolf in the Wilderwood in the hope he'll return the world's captured gods. Red is almost relieved to go. Plagued by a dangerous power she can't control, she knows that at least in the Wilderwood she can't hurt those she loves, again. But the legends lie. The wolf is a man, not a monster. Her magic is a calling, not a curse. And if she doesn't learn how to use it, the monsters the gods have become will swallow the Wilderwood and her world whole. Hannah Whitten's richly imagined debut is a sweeping tale of love, legends, and the secrets that hide beyond the trees. Okay. This sounds like it's right up my alley. It sounds like a book that I could probably love, so let's get into it. I just finished For the Wolf, and the vibe of this story is very much what I would expect Rebecca Ross and Rachel Gillig to enjoy. You've got this moody, magical forest, a brave female main character, and a male main character that is protective and strong, but soft once he lets you in. I liked Red, and I really liked the wolf too, who's actually a man linked to the Wilderwood named Aemon. And it's really interesting because they're both basically just pawns in this ritual bound from birth. And neither of them chose this life, but they're both really strong characters that are willing to make sacrifices and learn and do whatever they can to protect the woods and the people around it. There's a lot of tension between these characters. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and their complicated relationship definitely mirrors the fairy tale. And while I liked and enjoyed this book, I didn't love it as much as Ross and Gillig did, and there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, the world building wasn't super straightforward. There were a few questions regarding the magic system that went unanswered for too long, causing me to become a bit detached from that part of the story. And these are questions that were kind of big for the plot, like who or what created the Wilderwoods, how our characters' magic or link to the forest even works. Personally, I had a lot of questions about the kings that I felt went completely unanswered. Number two, the Valaden interlude chapters. These are chapters in which we are taken out of the Wilderwood to get Neve's perspective. Neve is Red's sister back in the village who is trying to figure out a way to get Red back home, even though Red doesn't want to come home and Neve just won't respect that, but whatever. Now, these chapters are critical to the story, but I found myself literally dreading them because, quite frankly, I thought Neve was pretty annoying and one-dimensional, and it was taking me out of the part of the story that was really working for me, which was Red and Eamon and the woodland setting. I'm gonna give this book 3.5 stars. I enjoyed the story and the overall vibe, but it's not a new personal favorite. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't include Kristin in this video, the woman whose books make me cry so hard that I make myself physically ill. She just has such a talent for storytelling, and I have a feeling she probably has good taste in books as well. Like Ross, Kristin had a lot of 5-star reads to choose from, surprisingly from every genre, but there's one historical fiction book that has been on my radar for about a year now, and I just haven't picked it up, and that is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. So, a few weeks ago on Instagram, I saw a clip of Bonnie Garmus talking about how she actually wrote the first chapter of this book in her cubicle at work after being disrespected by a man who took credit for her ideas, and that solidified it for me. Like, this is a book that I have to read. I also just know that this is an ultra-popular historical fiction book, and as someone who absolutely loves the genre, I'm just really excited. So let's read the synopsis and get a feel for what this story is about. Chemist Elizabeth Zott is not your average woman. In fact, Elizabeth Zott would be the first to point out that there is no such thing as an average woman. But it's the early 1960s, and her all-male team at Hastings Research Institute takes a very unscientific view of equality. Except for one, Calvin Evans, the lonely, brilliant Nobel Prize-nominated grudge holder who falls in love with, of all things, her mind. True chemistry results. Like science, though, life is unpredictable, which is why a few years later, Elizabeth Zott finds herself not only a single mother, but also the reluctant star of America's most beloved cooking show, Supper at 6. Elizabeth's unusual approach to cooking, combine 1 tablespoon of acetic acid with a pinch of sodium chloride, proves revolutionary. But as her following grows, not everyone is happy, because as it turns out, Elizabeth Zott isn't just teaching women to cook, she's daring them to change the status quo. I think we're both really excited to start Lessons in Chemistry, so let's get to reading. Okay, wow. I finished Lessons in Chemistry yesterday and I absolutely loved it. Before I say anything else about this book, I do want to point out that this is marketed as a funny, humorous read, and it definitely has moments that will make you smile or chuckle to yourself, but it also has many very serious moments as well. For one thing, there is a sexual assault scene about 20 pages in, and it only lasts for about a page, but I did want to warn readers that may be sensitive to that and may not have expected it. You could easily skip over the descriptive scene, but this is included in the book because it is a part of Elizabeth's story and her struggle in the field of science and being taken seriously. So it is mentioned multiple times after that, but only the one time in detail. There was so much I loved about this novel. The romance between Calvin and Elizabeth was so special. I found the characters to be very interesting, and I was even a bit surprised when I reached the end and realized how much I grew to love the side characters as well. The progression of the story is just beautiful. I was completely enthralled from beginning to end. Most of all, I appreciate the way that Garmus captured the way it feels to be a woman in a male-dominated field, or to have certain societal expectations, or the way that even women will turn on other women because they're pitted against each other. But we are so much stronger when we support one another and work together. This book takes place in the 60s, and we have definitely progressed since then, thank goodness, but women are still facing some of these issues today. I found this book empowering. It made me want to be more like Elizabeth, to be confident in my abilities and work towards making a difference while being unapologetically myself. It was just an easy 5-star read for me, and I know I'll be thinking about this story and Elizabeth Zott for a very long time. So I guess that brings us to the end of this video. I read 4 books and really enjoyed all of them. Absolutely loved 3 of them. For the Wolf and Lessons in Chemistry were 2 books that I've been meaning to pick up for a long time. And The Brothers Lionheart and The Disappearances are 2 titles that I was completely unfamiliar with before this video. So I would consider these last couple of weeks of reading a major success. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and maybe I'll see you next time. Bye!